And we still joke about this, that they gave me such a hard time, like, who in the world brings a birthday cake on their first day of work? I'm like, it's my birthday. They're like, so? Sometimes I'm going to start crying, which is crazy. So
yeah, I've never had anybody cry on my podcast before.
I'm a big softie.
So that's good. No, that's sweet. I love it. And with the social media, before the filming of this episode, we were talking about things with social media and how that's changed a lot of industries and giving more availability to the consumer about
things have changed tremendously about how do customers buy? What do their buying patterns look like? How do we sell to those customers, and who's even making the decisions anymore?
Yeah. Hello everyone, and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine. I'm Nadine, and today's guest is Logan Huffman, and he's VP of Sales with Daltile Southwest.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And this is a little bit different from what we normally do. He's not a designer, but definitely in an industry that helps designers out accomplish what they need to accomplish.
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about all things tile and materials with Daltile.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so
thanks for having
much.
me.
So let's get into first talking about Daltile and the history of the company. If you want to give us a little bit of information about that, and then we can go into how you got with them and start there.
Daltile was started in like the 1940s. Okay, so Bob Brittingham was the original owner of the company, and he started the company in a Quonset hut in Dallas, Texas. So hence the name Daltile, Dallas Ceramics. And humble beginnings from there. The company grew. I'll skip a lot of things, but there were some tumultuous times in the 90s for the company. American Olean, if you've heard of American Olean, which is now under the Daltile Corporation umbrella, actually purchased Daltile, okay? And then there was a lot of inroad fightings and who we were going to be as a company through the 90s, and then, you know, Daltile kind of emerged as this giant mom and pop operation that was driven from its independent sales and service center network that's national. So that morphed into what it was, and then eventually Mohawk Industries, which is the flooring global giant, bought Daltile, and then it just skyrocketed from there. So we got Mohawk behind them, we came underneath their umbrella, and then Mohawk incorporated all their carpet, resilient laminate, pad, everything that they do, all their footprints in factories, and it is what you see it is today. So under the Daltile Corporation, there's about 287 SSCs, that's what we call them, sales service centers that are operated within our own company. It's just a massive network of stores, and underneath the Dal umbrella is American Olean and Marazzi. So about 6 or 7 years ago, actually I think it's 10 at this point, Daltile purchased Marazzi and Marazzi Europe. I don't know if you knew that or not. So that's an Italian manufacturer. So really Daltile was known as like a manufacturer, like meat and potatoes type supplier, you know, for quarry tile, unglazed keystones, just very practical finishes. But we were really good at logistics, really good at service, very tight to the contractor. That's always been our bread and butter. But when we bought Marazzi, that was that design element that really came into the fold. And I know we'll talk about a little bit about that later, but that's when you started to see the program and who we are really adapting to what we are today.
And I'm sure over the years there's been so many changes when it comes to this industry. And the fact that they've been in business for so long and been able to grow in this way is kudos to them, because there is lots of trials and tribulations out there, which we're going to talk about now, some challenges about the industry, including all the competition. So I think one of the biggest industries to me, from what I see in competition-wise, is tile, because there's so many. So how do you guys stand out from others and do what you do?
It's hard. I mean, we joke inside the Daltile walls, it's a death by 1,000 cuts, because we're the 800-pound gorilla in the room, but everyone just takes little bites out of us, right? And there's certainly, like our competitions, there's good competition. It's healthy. And there's great distributors out there. There's great manufacturers that go direct to market with their products or go through distribution. But overall, I mean, it's just, we've stood the test of time, you know, just through our contractor relationships, because at the end of the day, it takes someone to install the product and they depend on us.
Right.
But we also, you know, it's funny you asked that question. I ask my team all the time, I'm like, what's the most important relationship to have in the industry? Is it, and you look at the birth of a building, okay? So you have developer, end user, where the money starts. You have general contractors, and then you have architects and designers, right? They're involved. And then you have the subcontractors that finish the projects. Well, which one's the most important relationship to have? Well, the answer is all of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You've got to have relationships from top to bottom. And Daltile's done a really good job of noticing those trends. Like you said, things have changed tremendously about how do customers buy? What do their buying patterns look like? How do we sell to those customers? And who's even making the decisions anymore?
Yeah, and with the social media, before the filming of this episode, we were talking about things, the social media and how that's changed a lot of industries and giving more availability to the consumer about all the things, right? So as you mentioned, how are they purchasing? It's giving them a more exposure to things that they maybe necessarily couldn't see on their own previously.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that made a huge difference too.
And consumers are so educated on product. A lot of times they'll come in and they know just as much as some of our design consultants or people know. They know what they want. They're ready to buy something, right? Floor and decor has definitely changed things for us. I know we didn't really talk about that much, but that really is a big impactful piece. They've been a disruptor in the market because of their model. Good for them. They've done a great job. But what they've done is taken the traditional methods of us as a manufacturer going through like a distributorships and floor covering dealers where a mom and pop would walk in and buy product, to where now they're selling direct to that mom and pop and they're basically cutting everyone else out. So it's really caused a lot of people to have to fix the way they do business, which is not a bad thing. I mean, things change, but hopefully that answers your question of how we've kind of evolved over the last 75 years to continue to hold that relationship with the contractor, which I don't believe will ever go anywhere, but also understand the dynamics of each individual market and how we need to influence people along the way.
Yeah, and it's just keeping up with those changes to be able
You have to
stay in, to be able to stay in line with the rest of them.
You have to do that even with specification. So a traditional A&D firm, where take 10 years ago, it was about this. Right? Like we would have to be there and doing CEUs, continuing education, giving samples. Today it's digital.
Yeah.
But that might change again, right? COVID changed a lot of things where people were at home. They weren't really in office, so what did they do? They depended on websites, platforms, where now it's more about they're getting back into office, so it always changes. But we try to stay in front of that.
That's great. So let's talk about another challenge that one would not think about, but then once we get into it, as we discussed earlier, about the interest rates increasing.
Oh, yeah.
And how that's affecting your industry. I think it pretty much is affecting most industries at this point, generally, but a lot of people wouldn't think that, hey, in your business, in tile and, stone, it may not affect you, but as you explained to me, it certainly would.
You would never think it'd be so hard to sell tile and stone, right? You're like, it's just a finishing product, right? But it absolutely is so sensitive to interest rates, because you think about it, the cost of a home goes up. People, they can't leverage and finance what they need. So what do? They don't spend as much money, right? Well, if they're not going to remodel their home or build a new home, or let's take residential, but then also you have to take commercial, right? Lenders that are lending developers money. I mean, they don't have, some of them have $100 million in cash sitting around, but most people don't. And they have to finance those. So if the project over the run rate is, they have to get a certain amount of dollar per rent per space, and that interest rate doesn't allow them to do that, then they shelf the project, which we don't get to sell tile for that. It's fascinating. So there's a ton of built up demand with residential specifically, where people want to buy, they want to move, right? They want to remodel, but it's just, it's all about what's the cost of the dollar. So, and it's been a tumultuous 6 months for sure. So we're hoping those rates kind of lower a little bit, but feds keep teasing it's going to happen, and they did one rate cut, so we'll see if they do any more.
Yeah,
so
everybody's anticipating or hoping it's going to happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
We do too, so.
Now, Daltile is a publicly traded company, right? Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how you grow and change. We're kind of going to get back to what we previously talked about in order to increase for your shareholders, because this is very important too for most publicly traded companies. So how do you guys handle those situations?
Everything's about profitability, but it's also about relationship. So it's not just about profitability. Like I grew up in this business. I mean, this is my 16th year doing this, but I always loved the fact that the company always took care of the customer. Doesn't matter. And I learned that from my mentor, my boss that's now retired. But everybody can do well when it's good. But when things get tough, it's how do you respond and how do you treat your customer and how do you help them? But with that, we control supply chain. So manufacturing facilities, which we didn't really talk about in our maturation of our company, but Daltile's a giant in the sense that we have, I'm not going to get this 100% right because just in general terms, but 6 North American manufacturing plants, one right here in Texas in Sunnyvale. We have plants that produce tile in Fayette, and then Florence, Alabama. Dixon, Tennessee is one of the most technical porcelain plants in the country. It produces all automated product, porcelain, rectified product, polished product. We manufacture quartz in the United States of America. We also have plants in central Mexico, and then like I told you earlier, we own plants overseas. So Marazzi, Europe. Well, here's something that I learned through this process is you have to have clay, right, to make products.
Right.
Well, if there's wars going on and it's not easy to get raw materials to certain places, I guess what happens to the cost of raw material? It goes up. What happens when container rates go up, when you have trepidation in the Red Sea or the Panama Canal?
Well, and I know that container rate going up was a major problem right after COVID.
Right.
Well, the whole container problem.
Well, it's
was
becoming
a
another mini COVID right now with a lot of the wars and the things that, unless you're living under a rock, you can see what's going on in the world. But it's not as easy to just get a finished product to a consumer, right? We make that look easy, which is our job to do that. But to your original question about profitability, if the cost of raw materials goes up, we can't necessarily always sustain that. So, yeah, and it's interesting to watch just the sensitivity to import, which a lot of products do come overseas, particularly luxury vinyl plank, which I know you want to talk about that a little bit. But where honestly you go through COVID and everything that we went through with that was honestly outside of the dark side of COVID, right? Where sad things that happened. But strictly talking about our business, it wasn't a bad time for us because we're a domestic manufacturer.
You didn't have to jump through as many hoops.
No,
Well,
90% of our products are made in North America.
That's great.
We do import a lot of product from our sister companies and our factories we own in Europe and in Italy, and those did get tagged, with increases. But overall profitability is obviously important as a publicly traded company. So, but we figure out a way to grow our profits and take care of our customers. So
that's good. Yeah, we'll get a little bit into the LVP, but my next question is keeping up with the trends. So.
Oh, that's the part you really want to talk about.
Yeah, I know, because of course,
I might shock you. I know a little bit about that. So.
That's great. It's such a changing industry, and new things are coming out all the time. So how do you guys keep up with what customers might want? What is the new thing? And it's a big part of your business. Oh yeah, for sure. So what do you guys
we always joke internally. I mean, without the design team and our product team, I'm worthless. I'm just a sales guy, right? I mean, if I don't have that, I don't have anything. And it's true, right? If I don't have the right products that the consumer wants, then we don't really have a lot to stand on. And I always tell people it's all about timing, look. Those are the two biggest things, right? And then of course price, but timing and look. But it's not just a look, it's did you bring the look out in the right time frame. A lot of times what we do, we're a massive ship. It takes us some time to turn sometimes. We are an industry leader in trend and design. But sometimes we're humans, right? We might miss something, right? Or somebody hits something just perfect and it's like, wow, we're getting a lot of pressure there. We need to catch up to them. But there's a life cycle on product, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Geometric shapes, edgy, trendy type products. I mean, that
color,
whites, blacks, grays. I mean, forever were super hot, and now it's leaning back towards warm tones, naturals, darks, which I love.
Yeah.
But you have to stay in front of that, and then it kind of get into the weeds a little bit. As a manufacturer, we have to hold a certain amount of inventory. It's not all made to order.
Yeah.
So you got to think about like the juggling act that comes in with like, we make 1 million feet of product a day out of some of these, at our factories collectively, and like we have to have product on hand for our customers. Well, those are dollars. You print a tile, it's not, you can't erase that. It's done. It's in the warehouse ready to go.
And hope that it's going to be popular enough to be sold to. That's a real challenge.
We have to get it right.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful dance of where our manufacturing team does an unbelievable job of planning, manufacturing works together, but your question about design. So we have a full design team in-house with Daltile. A couple people that don't need to mention their names, but they are Italian.
Mm-hmm.
They have wonderful taste in design, and that's where a lot of the design trends come from, especially in our finishes.
Mm-hmm.
Versailles is a big trade show that goes on every year. So we have our product teams travel to these trade shows, whether they're domestic or international, and we go and look at what they think the new trends are going to be, and then we start to collect ideas from that, color trends from paint companies, and just everybody kind of plays a part in that.
Yeah.
Influencers, and then we kind of take those things and we try to stay in front of them, and then we start to build our product portfolios. And then we all come into corporate twice a year. The product team presents to us as executives and shows us, hey, here's all the new looks we're looking at doing. What do y'all think about this? We actually have commercial councils and then just product team councils. Well, our regions will come in and actually get feedback from the field, from builders like yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, what are you seeing and what are you liking to use? And then we'll go from there to designers, to A&D firms. We'll compile this information and say, hey, you guys really don't have anything like this. We're seeing this a lot more. So they'll take the reactionary piece of what the market's already doing and see if we have gaps, but then they'll also look forward, to your point, of trend and see how we can try to pinpoint and create something new.
Yeah, and with, as I mentioned, with the way things change so much, it's kind of a challenge for people. I mean, it's great, me being in the build and renovation business, that I get to do these beautiful things with beautiful tiles and materials for different people every day. But even in my own home, it's like you do something, and then 6 months later, something new comes out.
Oh,
and
you're
it's like,
you're the biggest critic too. You're
Yeah.
completely jaded, because it's like I'll take my wife to go pick out tile, and she doesn't know, and she's like, oh, I love that. I'm like, we're not putting that in our house. She's like, what's wrong with that? I'm like, she calls me a tile snob.
Yeah.
We can't even go out to a restaurant, and I'm like looking at the floor and I'm looking at the walls. She's like, she knows. She's like, will you stop looking at the tile on the wall and just talk to me?
And for me too, it's not just about tile, it's
Yeah.
other things. I'm looking around and I see, a outlet is crooked in a restaurant
notice
or
that?
something. Yeah, and it's a curse.
My wife said, thank God I don't sell toilets,
Yeah.
because I'd be checking out something from that probably. So.
Oh, that's so funny. So it's keeping with the design topic, let's talk about the LVP, or luxury vinyl plank, if you don't know what that term is. It's a very, very popular material that people are using now, and I think it's great. We've put it in a lot of homes during renovations. It's very durable. People love it, especially if you have kids and dogs and all the things. So let's talk about what you guys have to offer there, and a little bit more detail on the LVP.
Yeah, what's interesting with LVT is we've been a tile manufacturer in Juggernaut for 75 years. American Olean's over 100, and that's what we're known for. But it's such a massive space. So if you look at the luxury vinyl plank or resilient industry versus tile, it dwarfs it. I mean, I don't want to get the number wrong, but it's a substantially larger business than tile. So naturally, as we kind of talked about profit, you talked about how do we grow as a company, the tile industry is shrinking, not because the square footage consumption's not there, it's because of the competitors entering the field, taking little bites out of that. So by force, we kind of got into it because it's just such in high demand, to your point. It looks great, it's super durable, it lasts a long time. It is, I would say it's more of an affordable price point for someone that is looking for that type of look. But Daltile, about 6 years ago, we took the plunge, using Mohawk as our parent company. We kind of learned some things from them, and we kind of tied ourselves to Mohawk. They let us share a bunch of different products. But today, we have an entire portfolio of luxury vinyl plank products, whether they're glue down or SPC rigid core click products, which is, I can talk about that if we want to, but there's two different types of installation. There's also loose lay. There's just so many different ways to install that product that they're learning. But today we have our own independent lines, whether it's wood planks, beautiful products, 9x71 inch SPC rigid cores, which is that's a standard width now you see a lot of, but the 71-inch is absolutely giant.
Yeah, I was going to say, whoa.
Yeah, and,
That's
and
good.
then the other things that we carry on our products are embossed and registered finishes, EIR, which if people don't know what that is, embossed and registered is very important. So embossed in register. So embossing is the texture on the actual top of the product. In register essentially just means when you're talking about maybe like a wood plank or some type of veining product that texture runs inside of that knot, which makes it more realistic. So there's a difference, right? And it's important to know that when you're showing a consumer, it's like, well, this product costs $1.50 and this one costs $3, and what's the difference? It's like, well, here's the differences. Then you get into the thicknesses of the platforms, right? The thicker the product, the more dense it is. Then the wear layers on them. That's the longevity of the top film that covers the product and protects that actual jet on the product, the design of it.
I mean, it's the same thing with hardwoods. The way you're explaining that, people look at that and they look at the top surface of a hardwood, how durable is it? So it's the same concept. But a lot of people maybe wouldn't think that, with LVP, that they might not need to consider it. They think it's all the same, but it's not.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. It's so difficult to keep up with like how people want to install it too. Tile is a little bit more straightforward. When it comes to those products, everybody's different. Some people like to install SPC rigid cords, which are click floating over the substrate. Some people like the glue down product. Some people like loose lays, which is just a heavier 5mm or a thick product that they can lay down and it's just perimeter adhered. So the interior has room for expansion and contraction because it is a plastic based product for the most part. So, and whether it's hot or cold, I mean, it will expand and contract. So I'm learning a lot about that product. But we have a huge portfolio now, from, like I said, wood looks to stone looks to glue downs to marble visuals, and it's been a really, really fun to watch it mature into what it is today. And I actually got to sit on the council and help build a lot of those products,
Wow.
so it's fun.
Well, a lot of people wouldn't think that there's so much to learn about that kind of product. But
I
there
know.
it is, I know.
It's like it's just a vinyl product. No, there's a lot that goes into it. So
I know quite a bit, of course, because we install them all the time, but I'm sure you being on that end of it, there's even more that, even I don't know.
Yeah, and we have herringbones too, which is neat.
Oh, yeah,
So-
which is a very popular design
Yep.
trend going on, back to trends these days. So let's talk a little bit about 2cm, 3cm materials.
Oh, yeah.
I brought that up that I wanted to talk about it because I think, at least in my business, there's people that have questions about which one is better, which one should I use in the kitchen, or which one should I use in the bathroom.
Okay.
There's a lot of confusion, I think, for people, so we have to go through and kind of explain what is better. Is one better than the other in certain places or no? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the way you went with that is interesting. We were talking about pavers earlier, 2cm and 3cm and the difference, but what you mentioned was countertops. So we're a huge supplier of countertops. We actually manufacture our own quartz countertops domestically. We have the largest quartz in the world. They're jumbo quartz, so they're the square footage on those, and I don't handle our quartz side, but I'll still speak about it. I think they're about 74.5 feet per slab. So when you're doing an island,
Yes.
you don't have to do a seam, right? So that's a big advantage with our quartz over a lot of competitors. But to your question about 2cm versus 3cm, really the biggest difference is aesthetic. Honestly, I mean, 3cm is a thicker profile, but when you're looking at the side of the product, a lot of people like the look of that 3cm thick product versus 2cm. But there's really not a huge difference in durability as long as it's installed properly and you do your supports and different things. 2cm is really good just from a price point perspective because it's not as thick, right? But then also you can use that in some certain different applications for vertical substrates.
We've done that, many times. Showers or backsplashes,
Yep, and then of course, and just to switch gears off the 2cm, 3cm for a second, we have other solutions. We have panoramic porcelain. So I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but Daltile actually produces a 5 foot by 10 foot porcelain that's in a 6mm or a 12mm thick product. So you can put those on floors or walls. They're a thinner application than a 2cm, but they're beautiful for showers. Like you've seen those where, you've seen full shower displays where people don't want grout. It's beautiful.
That's the
veins
thing.
are book matchable. So really cool products. 2cm and 3cm, talking about like for floors and exteriors. So Daltile produces 2cm porcelain pavers, which you're talking about outdoor patios, pools, things of that nature. you really can't set a 2cm loose. And what I mean by that is traditionally stone is a 3 centimeter product or bigger, but 3 centimeters is what you want because it's heavier and they can sand set that.
Okay.
Right, so that's what you want to put around pools. That's what the pool builders are used to using. However, if you have a concrete patio, like you have concrete outside, I saw that. Those are pavers, they're pretty. But if for some reason you want to take those up, and I'm assuming there's a substrate there, you can lay 2cm direct bond by a thin set or mortar directly on the concrete, and that's where they really shine. They can also be installed on pedestals, but that's a little bit of the difference on the 2cm and 3cm piece.
So getting back to your noticing things, noticing things outside of places.
I pay attention.
That's fun.
I looked right at your floor. I was like, oh, that's a concrete paver. It looks good.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I'm glad for the compliment. So thank you on that.
You're welcome.
Let's talk a little bit about some projects, specifically the Post Oak Hotel that you guys did.
Yeah.
So if anybody isn't familiar with that, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us, people around know about it. It's the only 5-star hotel in Texas, which is amazing.
So they say, but yes, I've been in it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so let's talk about that project a little bit, and I'm going to show some pictures so everybody can see the amazing.
Yeah, so that's a hotel in Houston off Post Oak. It's owned by Landry, so Tillman Fertitta owns the property. But that was one that is near and dear to me because I was able to work on that with a friend of mine that was a mentor to me that used to work for our company. But all the stone in the hotel was sourced direct for Tillman from Italy, and you can go in the hotel and look at the lobbies and the inlays and all the water jet mosaics, and it's all sourced from Daltile. So they wanted a very specific type of marble, and again, you get into these things where you would never hear these types of conversations, but you go walk in a hotel like that, you're like, man, this is absolutely beautiful. Whether you look at the floor or the walls, but you never know like the tenacity of dealing with those entities and procurement.
Sure.
Right, because they're looking for the best deals they can get, but they also understand they want quality and they want someone that can control that quality for them, especially when you're spending that type of money. So what ends up happening is they'll come to us to go do all the legwork, and then they might come back and say, hey, we can buy this cheaper from somewhere else, and that's just where we got to know how to do our due diligence and say, hey, you're not going to find this type of product anywhere else in the world. So you can get that, but it's not what you want. So anyway, we held our ground, and they ended up using most of our stone and all the lobbies of the hotel. But as I was mentioning to you, I mean, if you haven't checked it out and you want to go down there just in general, I mean, it's an unbelievable property. It's so beautiful. They have great restaurants all around there, great atmosphere, but the pool is amazing. The restaurants are amazing. The spa there's amazing. Everything in there was pretty much sourced from Daltile. So
That's amazing. I'll have to go now and look at it.
It's beautiful. You'll like it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I'm all over town all the time, so I'm sure I pass by it frequently, so I'll have to go check it out and see the work. Okay, so in closing, I will ask you my go-to question at the end. We'll talk about a funny story that you have that you might want to share with people for entertainment value.
I mean, I just think it's funny. Just maybe not funny to a lot of people, but it's funny in general to me. Just the way I started with the company, being a vice president for them now, such a large entity. But you never forget where you came from.
Yeah.
Right? You shouldn't, and I try not to. But I remember the day I started with Daltile. I walked up the ramp in Houston, Texas to a warehouse, just a young kid from Tennessee, and I didn't know anybody in Houston. I'd literally moved away from everything and everybody I'm going to go try something different. And it was my birthday and my anniversary all on the same day, right? So August 18th is always my birthday and my anniversary with the company. But I remember I was younger and my mom was actually with me, and she went and bought me a cake, and I couldn't eat it. So I was like, you know what, I'll take it to work to share it with the employees. Well, I remember a handful of those employees that still work for us today, and we still joke about this, that they gave me such a hard time, like, who in the world brings a birthday cake on their first day of work? I'm like, it's my birthday. They're like, so? But they still ate the cake too.
Yeah,
they enjoyed the cake, right? But it's funny, I was telling a guy that story the other day because as my anniversary comes up, they have to wish me happy birthday too. And I always remind them, I'm like, remember that day I brought a birthday cake? And they're like, yeah, I'll never forget that. It's like, you never know who your boss is going to be one day.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was really funny.
That's cute.
But yeah, and then just how I started with the company. And again, I kind of mentioned it's a very large mom and pop feel still, which is what I love about it. I mean, I've been with them 16 years. But I'll never forget the gentleman that really gave me my start. His name was Charles Baker. He's since retired. But he gave me an opportunity to work in Houston in a warehouse. I moved from Nashville, Tennessee, and now the gravity of that job that I now hold, that I knew what he was doing and how much it meant to me. He took time out of his schedule. I've had 400 or 500 employees, ran 6 or 7 states, and hundreds of millions of dollars for the company. And he still took time to pour into a kid.
Yeah.
And I tell that story because I'll fast forward. When I finally got my first opportunity to manage a branch, he was the guy that called me and said, "I got an opportunity for you. Do you want the job?" I'll never forget it. It was Midland, Texas.
Oh.
And I had no clue where that was at.
Yeah.
I called my dad all excited. I was like, "Dad, I got my first management job." He goes, "Where is it?" I said, "Someplace called Midland." And it was just quiet. He goes, I just remember him saying, "Oh no." But it's a great place. I love the people out there. But anyway, I went out there, did a good job, and progressed, ran stores in Dallas for our company, Austin, Houston twice, and now I'm over our whole sales and operations for the region. And I still talk to Charles this day. And I tell that story to people about how Charles went to Midland, Texas out of his schedule, and he spent 3 or 4 days with me and went and saw every customer. And it was such a small store, but I'll never forget what an impact that made for me, to have that guy go out there and do that for me. And I always tell him, I'm like, "Hey, do you remember that?" And he's like, "Yes, of course I remember that." I'm like, "You have no idea how much that meant to me." Now I know what he was actually responsible for, right?
Yeah.
And I just said, "Thank you so much for the opportunity." And he goes, "I never did anything for you, man. I just gave you a shot." And I said, "But that's what I needed, was a shot. I needed somebody to believe in me."
Yeah.
So I never take that for granted, because what I do is more than just a job. I'm dealing with people, and they're people, and they have lives, they have families, and I care very much about them. So and now the shoe's on the other foot, or the roles are reversed. Now it's my turn to actually pay it forward and take care of people. So
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
oh, me too.
Yeah.
It gets me emotional sometimes. I almost start crying. It's just crazy. So
yeah, I've never had anybody cry on my podcast before.
I'm a big softie.
So that's good. No, that's sweet. I love it. Well, thank you for sitting with me. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode and learning more about Daltile and the products that they have to offer. And like I said, we're going to insert some pictures, and we'll tag their Instagram handle. So if you want to look at what they have and get more information, you can do so. Thank you so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, until then, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.